Blog Talk Radio.
93. County 23, I'll give you a corrected address, but we do have a fire in a one-story ordinary. Looks like it's about 40 by 120, 125. County 23, we'll get to traffic control. Squad 5, Squad 5. Over to 273, 273. Over Battalion 18, 18th Battalion. With the 273, 273.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the premiere show for the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. I'll be your host. My name is Tom Merrill, and I got to tell you, I am extremely honored and actually a bit humbled to be joining the fire engineering family here as a contributor on Fire Engineering Talk Radio. And my hope is during the course of the show and subsequent shows that we can cover a range of topics and a lot of concerns and stories involving the volunteer fire service, and I definitely want to focus on a number of things that can impact the department's reputation, and I really hope to concentrate on a variety of ideas and what I like to call building blocks that basically put together can greatly enhance the department's overall image as a solid and well put together and professional outfit. Now, throughout the shows, you're going to hear me talking quite a bit about the main theme, and that is being professional, and I'm going to harp on this quite a bit, has nothing to do with earning a paycheck. And a lot of times when I do talk to the public, they'll say, oh, you're a firefighter. Are you a professional or are you a volunteer? And that's kind of what I take exception to, and I get going on my soapbox about, yes, there's volunteer firefighters, and yes, there's paid firefighters, but everybody certainly can be professional. And we certainly know there are probably professional outfits or paid outfits out there that maybe don't meet the definition of professional, and there's volunteer outfits that do. And we're going to talk about what, in my opinion, makes a professional volunteer fire department. Because when I consult the dictionary, I see a lot of different definitions for the word professional. And sometimes I see it means characterized by or conforming to the technical or ethical standards of a profession, or exhibiting courteous, conscientious, and generally a business-like manner in the workplace. And I think those certainly can apply to the volunteer fire service. And that's what I've been preaching for years, that a volunteer fire department certainly can be professional. And I also like to talk about being considered professional certainly has nothing to do with the age of the equipment, the age of the firehouse, how many runs the department responds to, what their operating budget is. Not at all. Professional has everything to do with commitment, dedication, our appearance, how we approach the job, how we train, how we prepare. It also has to do with how we treat our people, both those that we serve as well as our own members. All of those play into the professional equation and equal a professional firefighter. And I think as volunteers, we certainly can hold ourselves up to those standards, and I would hope you would agree. And I'd love to hear from you out there, those that are either listening right now or would love to email me if you're listening later on. I know sometimes we record these and listen at another time, but I'd love to hear from you listeners out there to get your perspective on what I'm talking about, because I am no expert. This is just something that I started talking about and writing about, and it kind of grew from there. And I'm always looking to hear other opinions, and doesn't mean everybody has to agree with me. I'd love to hear the good stories, the bad stories, the successful stories. I'd like to hear about what your department's doing to be professional. And if you'd like to give me a call, the number is open at 760-454-8852. Again, that's 760-454-8852, and I'd love to hear from you so we can talk about what it takes to be a professional firefighter. And before we get into doing what I want to do tonight, we have to thank our good friends at Granger who sponsor this show, and we're going to listen to a commercial from Grainger, because without them, none of this would be possible.
The 4,600-page Grainger catalog. Every solution on Earth for every problem under the sun. And now it fits in your pocket. Download the app today. Get it? Got it? Good. Call, click Grainger.com, or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I'll tell you, without Grainger, this wouldn't be possible, and I can tell you firsthand, they are great. I can remember when we moved into our new firehouse, which isn't new anymore. It was back in 1997, and anytime we needed to take care of a product we needed at the new firehouse, shelving or any supplies at all, it was get the Grainger catalog, and it was before the Internet, of course, and they had anything we needed, and I think their saying is over 900,000 products. So a great company with a lot of great products, and we thank them for continuing to host these fire engineering radio shows. Now, back to the volunteer professional image. Again, I'm no expert. I'm looking for callers. If you'd like to call in and share your beliefs and your stories, again, that number is 760-454-8852. Now, I consider myself, I'm just an average volunteer firefighter. Probably just like you, I joined my department with really no expectations as to what it was going to hold for me. That was over 30 years ago. I was actually going to college. I was looking for something to do. Again, now growing up in the 70s, I did find my favorite TV show, probably like a lot of you, it was Emergency. That did definitely draw me in, and I love that show, and I know a lot of you out there also listen and watch Emergency, whether you're like me and watched it when it originally ran back in the early 70s, or if you're catching it on DVD and first introduced to it via those retro TV channels. But that really piqued my interest in the fire service. I never had any idea or desire to join, though. It wasn't until I was going to college and I'm working my side job as I'm going to college. I'm working at a supermarket and meet a nice young man next to me who's trimming lettuce with me one day and says, I've been in the volunteer fire service for a couple of years now. Did you ever think of joining? And I'm like, me? No, not really. Well, his father was the chief, and he had been involved in it for a number of years before he even joined, going to the picnics and that, and he told me all about it. And a lot of my friends had gone away to college, and I was still home, and I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. So that's what got me into the volunteer fire service, going to college, and someone just simply said, hey, do you want to join, and talked me into it. And boy, was it certainly the ride of my life that's still going on now. Matter of fact, it led me into my paid career, which is a fire dispatcher, because I love the fire service so much. When an opportunity came on to take the civil service test to be a paid fire dispatcher for my local community, I jumped at it and was fortunate enough to get that job, and been doing that for over 20 years now. But as I was volunteering, I began to realize that it was a lot more than just being a volunteer, that the service we provided to our community was incredible and very, very, very important. And that we certainly preach this, that fires never knew the difference between a paid firefighter and a volunteer firefighter, and that was certainly driven into me by my trainers, my early mentors, my first chiefs. And we certainly strived in my department to measure up to any paid department and continue to train hard and work hard. And as I became an officer in my department, we were able to travel and go to conventions, and I started attending FDIC, and boy, did that message really get reinforced at the early FDICs I went to, and certainly made quite an impact on me. And I worked my way through the ranks and was fortunate enough to be elected chief of my department and served for the maximum 5 years as chief. We have 5-year limits, and after I finished my 5-year limits, my department was kind enough to surprise me and bring in Chief Salka, who's going to be my guest tonight. Chief John Salka came in and surprised me at my outgoing installation dinner, and he's the one that actually encouraged me, now that I was done as chief, to take pen to paper and start writing, well, I guess you could say take keyboard to computer and start typing out some articles. And I thought hard about what I could write about because, again, I'm just an average volunteer firefighter. I have no specialty per se over many of you out there. What am I going to write about? I'm from a small town in Amherst, New York, outside of Buffalo. What can I possibly talk about? And so I kind of gave it some thought and put some thought into it. And the next thing you know, I came up with this idea that had been reinforced to me through my 30 years in the Snyder Fire Department, which was all firefighters should work to create that professional image and deliver that professional service to their community. And once I started writing about that, Chief Salka introduced me to a number of people, and I was fortunate enough to meet the great Bobby Halton, who was kind enough to offer me putting my articles on fireengineering.com, and then he offered me this opportunity to not just write, but to talk about the professional volunteer fire department. And I'm certainly very indebted to them for helping me along the way. And again, I'm just an average firefighter working my way through the ranks in my volley department. I have family obligations. Before I was a dispatcher, I was in sales, so I was concentrating on a career as well. And I know what it is to be a busy volunteer. I have 4 daughters and married to a wonderful wife. And I know how it is to juggle both volunteer and your career and family. And those are subjects that we are going to talk about down the road. And other subjects we certainly can talk about, and there's many, is training and drills and what a professional volunteer fire department should offer as far as training and drills. I'm not talking necessarily subject matter, but I got to tell you that in the 15 articles I've written so far regarding the professional volunteer fire department, the most feedback I have received and the most passionate responses I have received has concerned training drills. And more often than not, unfortunately, I get negative emails and negative feedback from department members who say their department is struggling putting together proper drills and preparing for the drills. And I would like to spend an episode talking about some ideas I have and also hear from people out there about what you're doing to make your drills organized and creative and draw people in so people want to go. We have to remember that our people are coming home from working at the office all day or their factory job or whatever job they have. They're coming home. If they're lucky, they're spending a few minutes with their loved ones, maybe wolfing down a quick dinner, and off to the firehouse they go. And the last thing they want to see is an unorganized, chaotic mess with officers or drill planners still scrambling, trying to figure out what they're going to put on that night, or arguing amongst each other about wanting to do it one way or another way. That should be done ahead of time. That contributes to a department's professional image and professional reputation. And unfortunately, from what I'm hearing and the feedback I'm getting, there are departments that are struggling getting that done. And we're going to talk about that. Some other topics that we're going to talk about: customer service, how we can take care of our customers out there. And when I say customer service, I know it sounds like a store or something like that, but I'm talking about just dealing nicely with our customers. And I'll be the first one to admit, in volunteer departments, we can't do everything for everybody. Now, it might be easier for a paid department to do certain things because they're paid and they're on the job, and that's their duty for 12 hours or 15 hours or 24 hours, where we have families wanting us to come home because you're coaching that Little League game or you have to get to your paid job. So there's got to be a limit as to what we do, but we can still deliver that service nicely, competently, and what I like to say, professionally. And we're also going to talk about community involvement. Community involvement segues directly into recruitment. That's the best way to recruit new members, to be out in the community talking to our people, showing them how professional we are, looking the part of a firefighter, acting appropriately, reminding our members we're not down in the basement of the firehouse, to be cognizant of our language and how we're acting and our behavior. And we're going to talk about that. I'm hoping to have Chief Tiger Schmittendorf from the Erie County Fire Safety Division, who has developed some great programs for recruitment and retention, and we're going to talk about that. Hopefully that's going to be next month's subject. How we bring new members into our department is another area. The day of just welcoming in a new member, throwing gear at them and saying, start going to calls, kid, in my opinion, is over. We need to introduce them not only to your department and make sure they understand your department's operations and your department's expectations and your department SOPs. We also need to introduce them to the great fire service the Great American Fire Service, talking to them about where we evolved from. In a lot of cases, the American Volunteer Fire Service and your department's history correlate so closely together, you can make it an exciting opportunity to really get people fired up and passionate about not just your department but the fire service. But they have to know where we come from, both in your department and in the evolution of the American Fire Service. And from there we can talk about other things. What impacts our reputation? The use of social media today. Social media is good and bad. Some departments' answer is just to ban it. We're not going to let our members use social media to spread the fire message. I disagree. It's here to stay, and I think if we use it correctly, it can greatly enhance your department's professional reputation. It can greatly enhance your recruitment efforts. And if used incorrectly with one poor comment or posting, can greatly hurt your professional image and your professional reputation. Other things to talk about is understanding communication, both radio communication as well as internal communication. Next to drills and training, the feedback I get the most from firefighters out there is poor communication. And in this case, I'm not talking necessarily fire ground communication. I'm talking internal communication. Nobody told me about this drill. Nobody told me about the new tool we bought. Nobody told me they moved the tool from compartment A to compartment B. They bought this new piece of equipment, put it on the truck. Nobody told me how to operate it. And there's a lot of good ideas out there, and a lot of them that I've learned from other people. Again, I'm no expert. I'm listening to what people are telling me and also combining that with what I learned worked well to communicate and to get things across to our members. Same with radio communication procedures. That's going to be a great subject someday. We're going to spend a whole day or a whole show talking about radio communications. Who's dispatching your calls? This obviously is an area that's very important to me. I take great interest in it, being a fire dispatcher. But who's dispatching your calls? What are your SOPs for your dispatch center? Is your dispatch center strictly dispatched by fire EMS dispatchers, or is it a combination dispatch center where sometimes the fire department may take the back seat? I've heard some horror stories about how some fire departments take the back seat in their dispatch centers, and we certainly want to examine that. And there's a lot of great stories out there about some very progressive, busy, and very large dispatch centers doing a fantastic job getting the calls out and getting the information to their members. So we're going to spend an episode talking about dispatch and communications. And another big area, this is probably the third largest area of feedback I get, is officer development and leadership. These are huge issues today, and when you go on any of the fire service websites and fireengineering.com, there's a lot of information, a lot of good information out there about developing yourself as a leader if you're an officer, and even being a leader as a non-officer as you become a senior member, things that you can do to help mentor and train the newer members and, again, show them what it means to be a firefighter. Again, if you have anything to add, if you would like to tell me your stories and share success stories, share failure stories, whatever the case may be, feel free to call in 760-454-8852. Tonight's guest host with me is going to be Battalion Chief John Salka from the FDNY. He retired a couple of years ago, and tonight's topic when he joins us is going to be balancing the role of being a volunteer firefighter with being a paid firefighter. Chief Salka should be calling in shortly. We hope to hear from him. If not, you're going to listen to me ramble for a little bit longer about things I want to talk about. Maybe you'll be calling in to tell me your stories. But Chief Salka is going to talk about wearing the two hats, that of being a volunteer and that of being a paid firefighter, and we look forward to that. But definitely leadership is another area we want to talk about, management leadership, leading our firefighters. And, you know, it's difficult. I think being a volunteer fire officer, especially a chief officer, is one of the most difficult things that you can do because you can't, in a lot of cases, just demand people do things. They're volunteers. They may decide that they don't like the way you're treating them and decide not to get up at night for that call, or not get up at all for the next month for that call, or to come up to that work detail to help clean up the fire hall or the fire truck or whatever the case may be. We want to motivate our people. We want them to be at the firehouse. I've heard stories of some firehouses that lock their doors. They don't want people up there, and I disagree with that. I wanted firefighters hanging out at my firehouse. I used to say to the parents of our young firefighters, where else would you rather have your children be on a Friday or a Saturday night, your 17, your 18, 19-year-old child? Where else would you rather have them be on a Friday night? I'd love for them to be up at the firehouse, hanging out with good role models in most cases. But it also means the trucks are going to get out. They're going to get out quick. It's going to be a quick response. So we want to create a warm atmosphere. We want leaders that we have to be demanding. We have to have certain expectations, but we also have to have a certain way of doing that. We have to motivate our people and keep them wanting to be at the firehouse, because otherwise they're just not going to show up. So there's a lot of topics in that we can talk about. In addition to those types of topics, let's talk about some other things. There's a lot of things relevant to today's volunteer fire service. Now, you can't pick up the newspaper or go online today without reading about the paid fire service being under attack, and it's really sad. Every day, it seems, there's articles about the paid fire service being under attack. In my area, there's a city just north of us where now they take their minimum staffing from 9 firefighters down to 6. Those poor firefighters are under siege with the mayor, and it's an ugly, ugly situation. They're cutting staff, there's station closings, there's brownouts throughout, not just small cities, but large cities. But in addition to the paid departments being under attack, my gosh, the volunteers certainly are under attack as well in many areas of the country. Not just by the demands. I mean, let's talk about the demands placed on today's volunteers. That was something unimaginable just a few decades ago. Our numbers are dwindling. In most cases, the call volume is increasing, and the demands for training have increased, not just the firefighter training, but in most cases the EMS training requirements certainly have taken off to unimaginable hours of training. Just a few years ago, we couldn't have imagined how many hours of training. So what are we doing to deal with that? How are we going to keep recruiting members, getting them trained, getting them up to speed? Are there ways to do that? Some ideas go from just accepting members that only want to do EMS if your department does EMS and firefighting, recruiting some that just want to be firefighters. I've heard stories of some departments bringing in administrative members just to help out and do administrative work. Maybe they work at a bank and they want to be your department treasurer. A lot of nice ideas out there floating around to help keep our volunteer ranks filled, but also kind of limit the demands on everybody. My department, one idea we did years ago, probably within the last decade or so, is we used to have a maximum number of members, and we did away with the maximum. Why have a waiting list today? Why keep people waiting to join? We decided the more we get, the more we can spread the workload. So we did away with our waiting list, and it's worked out tremendous for us. It used to be 70, and at one point we were over 80 members, and it's just the more people, the more hands you have lending, getting into the pot, the easier the work is to get done. So those were some ideas that we came up with. Some of the other problems we're having today is forced consolidation. There's a lot of areas of the country that think there's too many fire departments in their area, so let's consolidate. Does that work? Doesn't it work? That's a subject for another day. Some departments are having trouble responding, and that forces the consolidation. Again, those are subjects for another day. The demands on the volunteer firefighter today and how to deal with those types of demands. And again, if you have anything to add at all, you certainly can call in at 760-454-8852. We're waiting hopefully to hear from our guest host tonight, Chief John Salka, so we can talk to him about the 2 different hats that he wears. And I have a lot of good questions that we can ask him. Maybe you do too, so keep that number handy if you'd like to call in and talk to Chief Salka. And before he calls in, we'll get into one of the topics that I'm, again, very passionate about, and what I hear from members out there is one of their chief concerns, and that's training and drilling, and what should we be doing in our volunteer fire companies to attract people to our drills, to get people coming to our drills and have them leave that night or that day and say, you know what, that was a good drill. I learned a lot, or I refreshed a lot of things that I had forgotten about. I'm definitely excited about training now because it's organized and pertinent and ready to go. And the very first thing I have to say about that is you've got to do it, and you've got to do it regularly. The day of training, I hate to say it, once a month, I don't think we can get away with just drilling once a month or, God forbid, once every couple months. We need to have regular training, I like to say at least weekly, and I know you can't make it every week. I can't make it every week. I work shift work, but you've got to offer it to your members as regularly as possible, and then it has to be communicated to them. Some companies like to do it on the same day every week. I know some companies like to mix up the day so they can catch different people at different times that they're available. The point is, whatever works for you, you've got to communicate it to your members. They need to know when drill is that week. They need to know what time it starts. And like I said earlier, they need to know once they show up that it's ready, it's organized, and it's ready to roll, because nothing looks worse. And it actually, for the officers, paints a bad picture of our officers when people are running around not ready to go. Now, we understand sometimes things happen. I'm not going to say things never happen to me. Of course they do. But if we have a plan and we're ready and we've communicated it, it limits the chance of things coming up. It limits the problems that may develop. And that is certainly a huge area of concern that I'm hearing about. And if anyone's got success stories for their drill program, their training program, I certainly would love to hear you. And again, the number 760-454-8852. You can give me a call. We'll talk about it. If you'd like to email me down the road, my email address is tamerrill, that's MERRILL, and the number 63@AOL.com. My kids laugh at me all the time because I still use AOL, but it works for me. If you'd love to shoot me an email, I'd love to hear from you. That would be fantastic. So what are some of the other things we can do for training? Like I said, we have to do it. We have to do it regularly. Oh, this is one you hear every now and then. We don't know what to train on. We've done everything. And that one I have a real hard time accepting. There are far more training topics than there is possibly time to do them all. And when we talk about topics, I can break it into Part A and Part B. There's the basics and then expand. And what do I mean by that? Everyone can practice the basics. You can never do enough hose stretching. You can never do enough nozzle work. You can never do enough tool familiarization. And once you got that down, take it up a notch. Get into the advanced scenarios, real-time scenarios. Throw monkey wrenches into the equation, broken lines, broken nozzles, long stretches, large flows, all that type of stuff. There's a lot of things we can do. But again, it's got to be thought out, it's got to be well planned, and you can't be just winging it as you go. We had a phone call pop up there and then disappear, so I thought we might have a caller. But training is certainly, I think, the highlight for most departments. Again, I don't think we do it enough. Another thing is you can spend a night just talking about your own department's history and heritage and where your fire departments come from. We've ended up doing that in my department and had tremendous success with it. And talking about the formation of our company, where it came from, how it developed, how it fit in with the local fire service in our area. And it's a great drill topic to pass on to a member. And what I found work, too, with the drill topics is it's great to assign them as far ahead of time as possible. Have somebody in charge of the drills who is taking the time to come up with a drill schedule, not weekly, not by the seat of their pants, but just doing it ahead of time, organized so it has some type of flow. People are assigned their drills ahead of time. And then what I like to say is have a lead instructor who's in charge of the drill, and if he's getting some assistance, those assistants should be lined up ahead of time also. I've heard horror stories from firefighters out there throughout the country who have told me when they get to their firehouse, that's when they find out that they're going to be assigned a drill. And I think you'd agree with me that just isn't possible. That just we can't do that. We need to discuss the drill topics ahead of time and plan those drills ahead of time and delegate assignments ahead of time, and then post our schedule. There's a lot of ways we can post it. Whatever you choose to do, whatever works for you, the main thing is just do it. Most companies do it a variety of ways on their website, on their bulletin board, via text messaging. And again, if it's the same time every week, there's still nothing wrong with reminder notices. And I'd like to hear from you on this idea. I've heard it go both ways. Do you publish the topic, or do you just tell people to show up and find out what the topic is? Well, we've gone both ways with it in my company because we all know we have those firefighters who, plan the drill they're going to go to, and if it's something they don't think they're going to like or it's one that they might get dirty or wet, they might not show up. But then I've heard other people say it's important to let them know so they can prepare and be ready for that drill. So if you have any feedback on that, I'd love to hear from you because you can go both ways with that. You certainly can. Are you going to end up telling people, or are you going to kind of keep it a secret? But, some people just put drill, and then some people might put car fire drill. Whatever you think works for you, that's something you can talk about with your officers. But the key there is to try and have a schedule, clearly communicate that schedule, and be ready. And as often as possible, stick to the schedule. Again, we know things come up, but it can prove extremely disappointing if a member does rush home from work, does wolf down their dinner, does quickly do homework with the kids or help coach that Little League game or whatever the case may be, and then get to the firehouse and find out drill's been canceled or is starting at a different time or whatever the case may be. Extremely demotivating and disappointing and can be demoralizing, no doubt about it. But again, things happen. And sometimes that is going to happen, and firefighters have to be aware of that. But we should try to limit that as often as possible because, again, it can really hurt people. It can really demotivate people if that was to happen. Now, drills need to be developed that are pertinent to the department's operation. There's nothing wrong with practicing all these crazy advanced scenarios that we talked about earlier. Or I should say seldom seen scenarios. Weapons of mass destruction. We certainly need to know about that. And we certainly need to know about incident command, but it's amazing to me when I talk to fire companies how many of them haven't stretched a line in a while, haven't actually flowed water. And I really think that our drills need to be pertinent to our department operations and really focus hard on what we're going to do more regularly than not. And, again, I'm amazed at how many departments, when I talk to them, haven't stretched a hose line and put water on a simulated fire in a while. But they've all had their, incident command training, weapons of mass destruction training. And, again, those are important. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But I'm just saying that, again, with topics, there's no lack of topics. No lack of topics at all. And we certainly can come up with a variety of topics to keep our people interested, to keep our people motivated. And in addition to coming up with those topics, there's a lot of strategies we can use to communicate the information to them, to be ready, and to be organized. Hey, folks, we're over a half hour into the show. If you have anything to add or would like to contribute, again, feel free to give me a call. 760-454-8852 is my number tonight. And still waiting for Chief Salka to call in. Something tells me I think he's down in Atlanta doing some training. Obviously, that's going late for him, and he may not be calling in tonight, so we're going to continue talking about training. As I said, we're about a half hour into it, and it's time to hear from our good friends at Grainger again, because, again, without Grainger, none of this would be possible, and we certainly thank them so much for sponsoring us. If you ever get a chance to check out their website, their products, you might want to do that because there certainly is a lot of things that they have to offer, and they're a great company.
With over 100,000 safety products, it makes me wonder, did Grainger write the book on workplace safety? Get your copy today. Get it? Got it? Good. Call, click Grainger.com, or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Absolutely. They are certainly the ones that get it done. There's no doubt about that. So what are some other drill topics? I had success once doing a drill that was nothing more than looking over the equipment on our rigs. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my department. My department is the Snyder Fire Department, which is just outside Buffalo, New York. It's a volunteer department. We cover about just over 6 square miles, and we run about 1,100 calls a year, somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100, primarily EMS calls. I'd say to everybody, we do get approximately two good working fires a year is what I like to tell people we get. And we get a lot of auto wrecks and a lot of medical calls and a lot of miscellaneous fire alarm activations and things like that. And we do train once a week. Our training night is Wednesday night, and we do offer day drills and some special drills throughout the year as well, just to try and catch people on other days. But every Wednesday night, I used to joke and laugh about when I got married and that I have not been home on a Wednesday night in the 32 years I've been a member of the Snyder Fire Department. Not so much now that I'm out as chief, but certainly for the first 28 years or so, it seemed like I could never watch TV or anything on a Wednesday night. It was just off limits. But that is definitely our training night, and we stick to it. And we had quite a bit of success just a couple years ago coming up with a new drill idea. And it might not be new to you, but it worked for us, and we've done it a few times since. And we have 3 pumpers that are laid out identical, and we have a ladder truck, a heavy rescue, and we have a couple light rescue trucks for our EMS calls. And what we did is we divided our people. On an average drill night, we get like 30, sometimes 40 people, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, but we divided up our people into different groups. And each group was given a number, and Group 1 would go to the pumpers, Group 2 would go to the ladder, Group 3 would go to the heavy rescue, and each group spent a half an hour going through the truck that they were assigned, and then after a half hour they would rotate to the next truck. But we opened up every single compartment, pulled out every tool, talked about every tool, how it worked, what it was used for. In some cases, we found out that the tool needed repair work, needed to be cleaned, whatever the case may be. And in other cases, we found out we forgot we even had it because it's not something we used every day. What a great drill, extremely well received. Great winter drill. It was the dead of winter. Everyone's nice and warm in the firehouse, drinking their coffee, and have their, it was just a great night where we went around the rigs and looked and pulled out every single tool. But you know what we found out? We didn't have enough time. A half hour was not enough time to do this. So we did it again another time, and this time we did 1 truck per drill. Now, again, our 3 pumpers are identical, so in most cases what's in the compartment on one pumper, which is engine 1, is in the same compartment on engine 2. That made it easy. So pumpers was one night. The ladder was another night, the heavy rescue another night, etc., and then the EMS vehicles. But extremely well received. Now, does that seem like it's hard to put together? No, but what it took is an officer thinking ahead of time about how to divide people into groups, and then assigning an officer to the different rigs, and making sure that officer knew ahead of time, not that night when he came into the firehouse. He wasn't told he would be doing it. It was ahead of time so he could plan out how he was going to address his group. He could also then look over the tools and equipment and make sure he was familiar, because we all know we don't always remember how everything works. We need a refresher ourselves. Gives that officer time to get that refresher, to read up on it. Also, another conflict I see comes up sometimes when we do these drills is the officer doing the drill may do it a little differently or give some information that the chief or if there's a head training officer may not agree with. And I always like to say whoever the lead instructor is should run their idea, run what they're going to teach by the lead instructor, by the chief, whoever it is, to make sure it's fitting within department SOPs, to make sure it's fitting within how they want it taught. And again, the time to do that is ahead of time so we're not getting into conflict. I've actually sometimes heard stories of conflict the night of the drill where people have stepped in to stop how the training was going on because it was contrary to their SOPs or how they're going to do things. And that's a little embarrassing. That is definitely embarrassing for the firefighter or the fire officer leading the drill and all officers in general. So, again, the lead instructor should be brought in to oversee the whole drill, and then the sub-instructors should review their plan with the lead instructor to make sure that that fits in with the department SOPs. So we did that the one night. And it was also a great credibility builder for the junior officers that were the truck officers that were going through their truck. Extremely good credibility builder for them. The members of the department saw that these officers knew their truck, knew the equipment on their truck. The officers might have prepared ahead of time by cleaning out the compartments, making the tools look sharp and standing tall, and it just led to just a good esprit de corps, so to speak. The tools were clean, and a lot of little-known tools were reviewed. If something was in a box, we opened that box up. If there was a smaller box in the box, we opened that up. And we really got to tear these rigs apart and refamiliarize ourselves with all the equipment. What a simple drill. What a simple drill with minimal preparation and training, but it had to be organized, and it had to be communicated. And when people were there and saw that that's the case, they were excited about it, and it just led to a feeling of, boy, we got some good drills here. One small example of how one drill can make a huge impact. One very, very simple drill. And nothing, I think you'd agree with me on this, when we talk about professional, let's now talk about amateur. One of the biggest examples of an amateur operation is what I like to call the dog wagging the tail. There is nothing worse than when a firefighter is told to go get a tool and they walk around the truck opening and closing every compartment looking for that tool. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. That, to me, says that firefighter is spending more time in their club room at their firehouse, more time solving the world's problems than they are nailing down the basics. Folks, every time we go to the firehouse, we should be impressing upon our members, especially our newer members, but all members from time to time should be looking over those rigs and reacquainting themselves with the equipment layout, where things are, because nothing is worse to a chief officer, and I know you chiefs out there have got to agree with me on this. There is nothing worse than when a chief gives an order to get a Halligan or any tool at all, and the firefighter runs up and has the chief to remind them where it is. The chief's busy enough. Officers, in a lot of cases, are busy enough. They do not have time to explain to every member where a tool is. This sounds so basic, but you know what? It's a building block toward a professional volunteer fire department. Equipment familiarization, equipment knowledge, basic equipment layout on the rigs, where it is, and not just by going into the firehouse and looking over the rigs, but by drilling on it. It certainly adds to your credibility, and I really can't stress that enough. If you've got anything you'd like to add, again, feel free to give me a call at 760-454-8852. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your stories, your success stories, your training success stories. We'll continue talking a little bit about drills tonight. It doesn't appear that Chief Salk is going to be calling in. So we'll talk a little bit more about drills and things we can do to make them interesting and, again, contribute to that professional reputation. And another thing I see sometimes with the tool drill is sometimes we just pick it up and talk about it, but let's make sure we handle it. Let's check it over. Let's have members hold it. Let's have members start that saw and practice with the tool, because we can go years without using some of them. We can go years without putting some of them in our hand. Let's not just talk about it. I've seen the drill where we have talked about a tool and it sits in the rig still mounted on the compartment door or wherever it is. Pull it off that door. Have another member pull it off the door. Here's a great example of what I mean by that. We have stores fittings in the Snyder Fire Department. We have stores fittings where you got to know how to lock the two ears together. You know, you have the ear on the one and the opening on the other, and they lock together, and it's easy to talk about. But I always like to stop the drill when I talked about it on the side of the pumper and actually have every member, whether they've been in 6 months, 6 days, or 30 years, do it with gloves on their hands, because it's always good to refamiliarize yourself with how it works. It's not complicated. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, but you know what? It is fantastic to actually have people do that, because A, they do it at least, they're doing it at least once a year, and B, they might fumble a little bit. And it was amazing how many times some, including myself, would fumble, say, oh, yeah, that's a quick way to do it. I got to do it this way. So just a small example of how important it is to actually get that hands-on experience, to actually hold the equipment and actually work with the equipment, not just talk about it. And all of this can be accomplished either out on the training ground or even, like I said, in that nice wintertime drill. Winter's coming up here in the Northeast especially. Start planning your drills. Great drill to be. You could do a week on each truck, just walking around for 2 hours talking about equipment, handling equipment, the uses of it, the pros and the cons. So great idea there too, just about actually touching it, using it, and explaining it to members, and not just talking about it, but having them do it. It's a good idea, and it really works. And another thing too is repetition's a great way of reinforcing things. I'm a great believer in repetition. There's nothing wrong sometimes with doing the same drill 2 weeks in a row, or even 3 weeks in a row. One spring we did nothing but hose stretches for about 3 weeks in a row at some acquired structures where we just constantly practiced getting the lines off the truck. And the first few times we did it, we might have done it without water, just to practice some basics on how to get it off the rigs without even flowing water. And then we started doing it, and we did it in slow motion. And then we move into real-time scenarios, and everyone had a blast. We actually then graduated into the trucks arriving in on scene. And but again, it took planning, and it took some effort, but it was the success was there for everyone to see. So I really believe repetition's a great way to reinforce lessons and ensure our members are getting the message. But always that but. If not done carefully, if not done creatively, they can also bore your members and sometimes maybe even prevent them from coming back from drills, and we don't want that to happen. But you can still get the message across and teach the same thing by tweaking the drills slightly. Drill evolutions can be repeated the same night or over several weeks. But again, we don't want to bore our people and make them too repetitive where they're bored. So you come up with some creative ways there to think of how to get your people to come back and to embrace the repetition, because you could just throw different curves at them. And here, one of the challenges sometimes is you don't always get the same people. So if you're going to plan on doing a repetitive drill 2 weeks in a row, you might have a different group show up. You're going to still have your core group. You're always going to have some that were there the week before. But you're going to have a plan for those that maybe weren't there the week before, for the introduction, for the basic coverage. But you can get creative, and you can have an officer take them aside and bring them up to speed while the other people are getting going with the advanced scenarios. But it can still be done in that way, and it can still deliver the same message. And another challenge sometimes is your different tenures of people. I like to point out sometimes to trainers that, in the volunteer ranks, we certainly don't know who's going to show up for drill. So it's a good idea to plan on good attendance and bad attendance. You might have the best drill in the world planned for 30 people and get 15 because it's a school event that night or just something else going on to prevent your members from coming. Or you might have a drill plan for probies and get all veterans, or vice versa. You got a great advanced scenario drill and all the probies show up. More often than not, though, what you're going to get, and you know this, is a combination of the two. You're going to get probies, you're going to get veterans, and you're going to get the middle of the road. And I always like to say, try and plan on activities that can benefit all the members, veterans as well as the newer ones. It helps keep the senior members interested, hopefully encourages them to continue attending, because too many times I've heard where the veteran will say, I've done that enough, I don't need to. Get them involved. Challenge them. Even if that drill is routine, such as reviewing your SOPs or, talking about that tool that they've used a million times. Get them involved. Let them mentor the junior member. Let them get involved and pass on lessons they learned. Or let them go off with another officer. Let the veterans go off with another officer and practice advanced scenarios. In our case, sometimes it's our ladder truck. We don't operate that enough. We'll let the senior members go off and practice with the ladder truck. Or if we're out at the drill tower, we'll let them go and do advanced scenarios because it keeps them involved, and it keeps them interested, and it keeps them wanting to come back, and it also makes them feel important. They feel like they're part of the group. It feels like they're respected because their input was sought, and there's nothing better than that. Challenge them for that. Challenge them, and again, I think you'll benefit. I think you'll benefit from that. And again, don't be afraid to use a senior member to mentor and teach and lead a group and discuss things ahead of time. But I like to do that ahead of time too. I like to get their buy-in ahead of time. I like to let them know, hey, Joe, just so you know, I'm going to want you to go over our SCBAs with the group of probies. But try and get them that information a little bit ahead of time so they can prepare too. We don't want to catch them off guard. We don't want to catch them where they're not ready. So if possible, you know you're going to be light on officers one night and you're going to plan on using some senior members, try and get them notified a little bit ahead of time. Or if you have to do it that night because officers you thought were going to be there aren't showing up, take them aside. Don't let them know at the same time the group is knowing. Pull them aside a little bit, talk to them. Are you comfortable with this? Is there anything you need to go over? And here's some of the main points I want you to make sure you cover. That's all important, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, don't let the newer members get overwhelmed and confused with everything that's going on. Assign a senior member or, again, an officer with those new members to keep working with them, to review what's going on, to teach these new recruits the way things should be done. And at the same time, be leery, and I know you all know this term, of the 622s, those members with 6 months experience but act like they got maybe 22 years on the job. Now, these members are usually very dedicated because they're new. They're usually very eager. They may be going to a lot of calls. In my opinion, we don't want to demotivate them. We don't want to belittle them. We don't want to make them feel like they're not important, even though they may act like, I've done that I did that at drill 2 weeks ago. I don't have to do it again. No, they have to do it again. We need to work with them, but we don't have to belittle them and make them feel like they don't know anything. We should certainly appreciate that they were at drill a couple of weeks ago, but we should throw some advanced scenarios at them or make them review with us what they've learned, because again, they're dedicated members, and they feel that they did it a few times at drill. They may feel like they really got it down, but nothing could be further from the truth, as you know. So get them involved. Keep them drilling and training, and just like with the senior members, challenge them with slightly different aspects of the material that you previously covered, but you're still delivering that same message that you're doing at maybe the general session with the other members. Another good thing to keep in mind with drills is try and, again, have plans for good attendance and bad attendance, because your drill could fall flat on its face if you were planning on 30 members being there and only 6 show up. So, one quick example, if that was to happen, have Plan B. Plan B is, okay, we're simulating a daytime fire. We're the only 6 that showed up. How are we going to fight the fire? What are we going to do? Because there's nothing wrong with doing something like that. So talk about what the priorities would be, how you would handle it with the minimal staffing. If you were planning on if you were planning on going outside for drill and now you only got a few people and you're going to do an inside drill, maybe do some tabletop discussions. Going over your SOPs. The point is the drill must remain flexible to accommodate the attendance that you have. And drills and training and preparing and communicating, to me, are extremely, extremely important. And it looks like we have a caller on the line here. I'm just waiting to see if it comes through, but looks like it's in the screening room, so we'll just wait here a second because there's a question mark over it. But I can't say enough about the drilling. I can't say enough about the planning of drills. And again, in the articles, I've written about 15 articles now in fire engineering. And I would say the most feedback I have gotten has been concerning drills and feedback and not being prepared and not being ready to go with good, solid training drills. Looks like our caller was dropped, so we don't have him anymore. And if you would like to call in, feel free to do so at 570-743. I'm sorry. Looks like we lost our connection here. And if no one's going to... Yeah?
Tom, this is Pete from Fire Engineering. You're fine. Your connection is fine. That caller
Okay,
just dropped
Go ahead,
off,
Pete.
so sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It looks like
He's come back in. I'll take a look in there.
I see it's back though. Is he calling back in?
Yeah, let me take a listen and see who it is. Be
Okay,
right back.
I'll wait for you. Oh, that's my fire engineering producer. He's going to talk to the caller, see what they want to talk about. But again, Chief John Salka was going to join us tonight. I know Chief Salka is a great man, and something obviously came up, and I know he'll reschedule with me. And I hope you can join me when he does join me again, maybe next month or down the road a little bit. We were going to talk about him wearing two hats, because I know that is definitely a subject in the volunteer departments that is talked about quite a bit. Some departments treat the paid firefighters very well. Some paid departments treat the volleys really bad, and but there's others that have just great success stories. And I would like to hear from you and hear what you have to say on that. And it looks like I have a Chief Majors. He's a local chief from my area on the line, and I would like to hear from him. If Pete, you could put that through. And Chief, are you with me?
Hey, Chief, how you doing?
Hey, Chief, what can I do for you? How you doing tonight?
Hey, doing great. I just want to tell you that extremely proud of you being on the radio, and that the folks that don't know you should listen to you. You're a very wise man. You've got a lot of years of experience, and I consider you to be one of my mentors. And I know our department looks to your department for what you've done in the past, and a lot of that came from your leadership and those things that you've done. So I think Fire Engineering did a great job with getting you on the radio, and that you're going to be a great asset for this topic.
Excellent. Well, listen, hey, that's really nice of you. I really appreciate you passing that on, and thank you so much for calling in and sharing that. And obviously I'm a bit humbled because I learned from people before me. They passed it on to me. I don't think I can take credit for reinventing anything here at all. And but I really appreciate it. Do you have any training tips you'd like to pass on, Chief? What are you doing for your training to keep people interested in coming back? And do you find it to be the challenge that we all do?
Well, one of the things that I ended up doing prior to becoming the chief, I was the training officer, and at first I tried to hang on to that, and I learned very early on that was something that I wasn't going to be able to do. So I passed it on down the line to one of my assistant chiefs, who's a past chief himself and brings a lot to the table for me. And delegation is huge, and Assistant Chief Beal is constantly looking for new training. He's constantly trying to engage the new members and the old members and keep them moving along. Like you said before, too, about being able to adapt things on the run. We bought a online training service to our district, which has been a tremendous asset to us. And for our driver training this past week, we had a different group of guys show up than what was expected. So the assistant chief that was running that drill was able to tailor the classroom portion to those folks by having, an asset like the online training. So that's one of the things that we've done differently from years past and using.
Oh, that's excellent.
More of the tools that are out there.
That's a training. It's for driver training.
Well, for our drive, we used Target Solutions, and they have one of their programs. There's multiple driving classes on that, and so the group of guys that was there was a little more senior, and so it gave him. He picked a more advanced driving classroom portion of it for us, and we went through that the week before he had done it. He had some younger drivers concentrated on one of the classes that was more geared towards them. And it's changed. The training has changed from, the old days where you would stand and talk about it and then maybe go out and do some hands-on stuff. The firefighters are more engaged now, and they want to know why, and they want to know the science behind it. And
do you find the younger ones, and the younger ones, do you find that they're more? I don't know if this is the right word to use, but you almost got to entertain them more. They're so used to how quick things are today and how the information just is so fast, and we just got to engage them so actively. And it sounds like you guys got a good handle on that, which is great.
Yeah, it took some change for us because we've got the chiefs that are doing in my line, some of our technology isn't their forte, and they've had to come and learn that, so that they can reach out to the newer folks and the older folks. It gives them a chance too. You're not hearing the same old version of the trainer standing up there just talking. So you're able to bring out somebody's different point of view and apply it to us locally and how it's going to work for us.
Absolutely, that's true. Absolutely. Well, it's good to hear from you, Chief. I really appreciate you calling in and sharing. This Chief Bill Majors from the Great Clarence Fire Company, which is my neighbor to the east a little bit. I've gotten to know Bill over the years, a great progressive chief, and done a lot for his department. And obviously I can see Clarence is really focused on training and understands the importance of it, and certainly helps contribute to the overall, not just the operation of the department, but the image as well, because it pays off at the emergency scene for sure.
That it does. Tom, you have a great night, and thanks again.
All right, Chief. Thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, brother.
All righty, brother. Bye-bye.
Take care. It was Chief Bill Majors from Clarence, New York. Clarence Fire Department, a volunteer department to the east of me. He's also a firefighter at the Buffalo Airport. A lot of years of experience, a lot of knowledge, and I'm glad he called in. And again, just to reiterate the importance about training and getting it right. And we could certainly talk to him quite a bit on that. And again, if anybody else has anything to say, please call in. Otherwise, we're going to call it a night soon here. Unfortunately, Chief Salka couldn't join us. I'm sure he'll be reaching out to me, and we'll be rescheduling that, and we'll save that subject for another day. But again, the talk here is on the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. My name is Tom Merrill. I'll be hosting this show about every 6 weeks or so, and I really look forward to it. I've got a lot of different topics coming up. I covered them earlier, but again, if Chief Salka can't join us again in the next episode, I'm looking to have Chief Tiger Schmittendorf from Erie County Fire Safety Division, who has done a tremendous job nationally talking about recruitment and retention. And I think that is so important in the volunteer fire service. A lot of great ideas out there on how to recruit members. It's also, in addition to training, recruitment is definitely a huge challenge in the volunteer fire service today. There's just no doubt about it, and love to hear ideas and things on that people are doing, the success stories that are out there. And another episode I have coming up, I'm working on getting some people in talking about physical fitness. Now, I know that sounds boring, but when you look at the statistics, people, what are we dying from in addition to the driving accidents? It's sad, the amount of heart attacks and physical afflictions hitting firefighters. The cancer epidemic among firefighters. It is something we need to be aware of. It's something we need to talk about. And I always like to point out that anyone that knows me, I'm not the big, brawny, 6'2" firefighter that can do everything by sheer strength, but I was always determined never to let my smaller stature interfere with doing the job. And I've always been determined to keep myself physically fit. And I think sometimes we have firefighters out there that are being dangerous not only to themselves, but to the public they serve by not taking care of themselves. And, we all have time to sit at our firehouse for an hour talking about world politics or firehouse politics and the problem of the day. I think we can use that time to at least do it, talk about it on a treadmill. Talk to your fellow firefighters on a treadmill or a stair stepper and complain about the fire hall politics, but at least you're doing something for yourself. And I got some people that I'm scheduling to bring in to talk about what we can do to take care of ourselves. So a lot of different subjects that we can talk about. And in my presentation that I like to do on the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, I call them building blocks. A lot of individual small building blocks that we can put together, each building block contributing one small part of a professional operation, but all put together make a professional operation, make a professional volunteer fire department. And again, it has absolutely nothing to do with earning a paycheck. It has to do with attitude, appearance, commitment, dedication, passion for training, passion for taking care of our fellow firefighters, passion for taking care of the public, the community we serve, serving with honor, and that is what makes a professional volunteer fire department. And we're going to continue talking about it. We're going to examine these issues, and my next episode will be in November, and I hope you can join me then, because we're going to have a great show with a lot of great guests, and it'll be on November 18th for my next episode of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. And I know I talk quite a bit on training. I could probably talk a little bit more on it. Would love to hear from you. If you'd like to get a hold of me, feel free to shout out to me at my email. It's TAMerrill, that's MERRILL, the number 63 at AOL.com, TAMerrill63 at AOL.com. And I'd love to hear from you. If you don't feel like coming on the radio or the internet and talking to me, then shoot me an email. Love to hear your ideas. Love to hear your success stories. Love to hear what you're doing to contribute to your department's professional operation, and love to share it with everybody out there. And the amount of feedback I get on the articles I've written is tremendous, so I know there's a lot of interest in it. And again, I don't have all the answers. I certainly can learn from you as much as hopefully you're learning from me. And if there's one message for tonight, it's train, train, train. Be prepared. Put the time into the training. Have a senior training officer. Have the junior officers helping out, but somebody overall needs to be in it, be in charge of it, making sure it's organized, it's ready, it's planned, it's communicated to the members, and we need to make it interesting, and we need to make it enticing for our members to come back week after week after week so they can learn and practice and train and make your department a professional operation.
When we put out fires, it ain't the metaphor kind, kid. That's why I use Grainger. They got everything. They got Bullard helmets, Cosmos boots, Elkhart brass nozzles, and on top of it all, Grainger's got the inventory management solutions to keep the heat off the books. Heck, they've got just about everything you need for the fire station except the trucks. When you think fire rescue, you think Grainger. Get it? Got it? Good. Call, click Grainger.com/public safety, or stop by for the ones who get it done.
Thank you so much for joining me tonight, people. I really appreciate it, and we'll be back here again on November 18th talking about the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. Until then, stay safe, continue training, and continue representing your department in a professional manner, because remember, you are all professionals. Thank you.